HannaTalk. What is up, Fullmetal Alchemist fans? Simon here. Welcome to HannaTalk. Hope you're all doing absolutely fantastic. It is a beautiful day right here in Melbourne, Australia. And today, this week on HannaTalk, I am here with a very special guest. Now, she is a voice actress who is best known to fans as the voice of Azumi Curtis from Fullmetal Alchemist, and also having made her return to Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood years later. But she's also known across shows and projects such as Azumanga Daioh, Angelic Layer, Akame Ga Kill, Panty Pony Dash, Samurai Gun, Full Metal Panic, Bubblegum Crisis, Made in Abyss, and so much more. Please welcome to HannaTalk the amazing Christine Auten.
Hello, it's great to be here.
It is absolutely fantastic to have you here, Christine. How are you?
Good. Yeah. I'm kind of freaked by the time difference. It's so interesting that it's morning for you and it's evening for me.
Well, that's just the way the world works, unfortunately.
Yeah. I'm old enough to be amazed by technology that lets me talk to you in Australia right now.
That is true. I mean, well, we've all gotten used to using Zoom, especially like during the time of the pandemic and the lockdown, which goes into my first question, which is obviously back during that time, we were working during the pandemic and the lockdown. How are you able to keep things up, especially on the acting side of things?
Well, I actually am a dual sort of actor in that I don't just act. I'm a producer and a director as well, and I also produce events. And so I was actually during the pandemic worked on a lot of virtual events and did produced some stuff for the election cycles coming up, and I produced some other events that went online, and that's what I did. I also did some videos that needed that were for the deaf, that needed they had sign language and needed a voice interpretation recording on top of that sign language. I did a lot of that. I also recorded virtually, so in my setup, most of us now have worked out how to record virtually, how to record at home.
That's fantastic. And that's definitely seems to be the case with like a lot of voice actors that have had home recording studios set up, but they've also had them set up way before the pandemic and the lockdown had even happened as a way to kind of work from home. That way they're not able to be in the studio for like such long periods of time. But I guess you could almost say in a way it was like them preparing for the coming apocalypse, so to speak.
Yeah,
from a voice acting.
Also, you don't have to be tied necessarily to a location then. For example, my husband and I, in 2016, sold our house and moved into our big RV and traveled across the country. So I needed a mobile setup at that point. So I built a little booth in my RV so that I could be anywhere.
That's amazing. That's definitely mobile to say the least.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think I did any shows mobile during that time, but I did other ancillary voice acting work, like commercials and other voice acting stuff too, that I did while I was recording on the road.
That's
but for
fantastic.
shows, I actually prefer to be in person if I can be. So wherever I am, I tend to travel to get there and do it in person.
No,
I just like it better.
No, absolutely. No, that's fantastic. And it's kind of true how you said about like you don't necessarily need to be in like a really big location to make it as a voice actor.
No,
you can do
not anymore.
Exactly, because you can easily do voice acting from pretty much everywhere in the world. Just the biggest locations as far as like voice acting, and I guess you could say as far as animation community is concerned, as far as the US is concerned, has always come from like Los Angeles, New York, Dallas. Like that's where a lot of the big voice acting names, as far as the
Houston is huge. That's where Sentai, formerly ADV, was.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Houston. Yeah.
So those are kind of like the really big locations as far as like the big voice acting community is concerned, which is fantastic. But as you said, you don't necessarily need to be in any of those locations to make it within the voiceover industry, so to speak.
It helps at the beginning of your career to be in hubs because of who you get to meet, and so much of any business, regardless of if it's acting, directing, or working in an office, it is about connections that you make in person. So sometimes at the beginning of your career, it's a lot more beneficial for you to be in those areas, in those communities. communities and participating in those communities. But once you're established and people know your work and like to work with you, yeah, you can move around for sure.
That's fantastic. That's absolute, and that's definitely true. Now, let's get started with going back to the very beginning of everything. So, how did you get started? How did you get started in acting? Like, how did that come about for you?
I have a theater major, so I've been acting since I was a child, and I went to school for theater. I have a bachelor's degree in theater, and I was acting in professional theater before I got out of high school even. And so I went to college and got my degree, and I worked locally in theater for a very long time. I also had an agent, and I did some commercial work and some film work. I was in Houston, based in Houston. And this is back, I mean, it's kind of difficult for a lot of people who are still fans of Full Metal to think that, you know, when I started, they weren't even born. They weren't even born. So back in 1996, 97, I was working on a play with a woman named Amanda Wynn. She's Amanda Wynn Lee now. And some other people, Tiffany Grant, and we all got to talking. It's like, well, we've been doing these, like, picking up these animation voiceover jobs. And I'm like, oh, that's kind of interesting. So I put together a voiceover demo. I put together some work I'd already done and did some spec work. Put together a demo and sent it in. I didn't hear anything for like a year. And that's something I like to tell people, you know, when you're trying for these things, it'll take a while. You know, it's not like this instant, you know, it's going to come back around to you. And I contacted every once in a while, sent in a resume again, nothing. And I sent these into ADV, which was my local, it was in Houston, so ADV Films. And then about a year later, I get a call from Matt Greenfield, who said he found my tape in the bottom of a drawer, a filing cabinet drawer in the back. And he listened to it and thought that he would bring me in for a little show, because at that time it wasn't really auditions. I mean, some people did audition, but at that time, I mean, there was like 5 actors and 1 director, so it was very, very small. And the titles were very obscure. Nothing was on television, for example, except for maybe like Thundercats, you know, was something going way back. And so he brought me in. I did a show, a tiny little part in a show called Fraulein Yuna. I think that's what it was called. And then that served as my audition for Pris in Bubblegum Crisis.
Wow.
So and so I did that one, and that was back before nonlinear editing. So you had to be on. You know, you had to learn how to sync with the animation as you go. And it was really difficult. It really was. It was a skill, and it was stressful and difficult to learn. But I was already an actor, and I already had that skill set, and I already knew how to talk to directors and how to approach a script. And at that time, we got all the VHSs. Yes, VHS.
Yep.
Back when there was that thing. We got all the VHSs. We got that had the subtitles. We got a script. We got to practice, you know, before we went in, and it was really intensive, and you really had to practice it because you had to get it on the tape. There was no, you know, stretching and cutting and like you could do with nonlinear editing now. And that's how it started. And those of us who learned back in that period of time are now extremely fast when it comes to syncing. We're very, very fast because it's a skill that once you have it in you, you have it in you, and you just don't lose it at that point.
No, that's fantastic.
Now actors don't have to sync as well. They don't have to be as on, and that's cool for them because it lets them act first. For us, it was more like get those lip flaps right, and acting was on top of that, you know. But mostly it was getting the lip flaps right. So that now you can really focus on your acting. You don't have to be so focused on getting those lip flaps exactly right. The scripts are written better to the flaps now, so you can actually just act it. And then the engineer and the director do their work and fit it in there and make sure that all the flaps link up. And if you need to redo something, you can, but usually you don't. Usually you can just keep going on.
No, that's absolutely fantastic, and especially when you were talking about before how you you were a major in theater work at the time before you went into voiceover work. Had you have not gone into, would you still wanted to go on to do like theater work even after becoming a voice actor?
That's really tricky. I'm actually very shy and kind of awkward, and I've always, you know, a little ADHD, a little bit on the edges here of social behavior, so I was uncomfortable being in front of people on stage. When I was in it and really in the zone, I loved it, but the prospect of getting up started to get to me, and I was getting stage fright a lot, and this is after decades of doing a lot of major theater, and I just suddenly hit me. It's like, I can't be in front of people. So when a voice acting came around, it was like, oh, well, this is me then, because I don't have to be in front of people, be in a little booth by myself. I could still do the acting part of it, which I loved, and then after that, I was kind of hooked, and so it didn't really occur to me after that to really go back. I did a couple plays after that. I did a movie, I think, after that, maybe a commercial, but once I got in it, I was in it. I was just like, voiceover is what I want to do.
Well, you were definitely born to do that, because otherwise you would never have gone on to work with, like, obviously your fellow cast members like Tiffany Grant, Amanda Wynn Lee, and of course getting to do the roles that you would become so synonymous with, which is just fantastic. And who knows if Fullmetal Alchemist...
I'm incredibly lucky.
That's it, absolutely. And who knows if all the shows, particularly Fullmetal Alchemist, would have even happened in the first place. They probably still would have happened, but it would have been very, very different.
Honestly, there are some amazing actors that could, and that's the thing to remember with any acting part, especially voice acting. There are a lot of incredibly talented, amazing actors that could go into any role, and that's just the truth of it. And lightning strikes, so you get lucky and you get a really great. That's fantastic, but I also know that Stephanie Brim could easily pop into anything that I do and be fantastic, or Patricia Duran, or there are a number of actors who could just easily go into what I do, and I'm not saying that we're interchangeable. I'm just saying that the product is the thing, the character, the show, how it was produced. That's what really grabs the fans, and there are a lot of actors that could deliver that, but and I have talked to, they're fans of the show and they're fans of the character, and I feel like I'm honored, and I did a lot of time and effort and heart to it, but it's the character, Death is Death, Azumi is Azumi, and I think that regardless of who voiced them, those are still iconic characters, and
absolutely.
I'm just fortunate,
No, absolutely, and that is definitely true. That is absolutely fantastic. Now, who would you consider, like, growing up, like, in the acting field and stuff, and especially going into voiceover work, who would you consider to be, like, your acting influences?
Well, acting, I'm a kid of the 70s and early 80s, and so, as far as wanting to be an actor, it was Star Wars. Really. I wanted to be Han Solo so bad. I wanted to be up on screen, being in those worlds, and it wasn't necessarily like I want to be an actor. No, I want to be a starship captain. I want to be these characters, and that's where I got the acting bug. Can you hear me? My ears kind of easing a little bit.
No, it's like I can hear you perfectly well.
Okay.
I can hear you perfectly well.
Okay,
it's all good.
Well, so I got the acting bug through, I love the sci-fi, or my just watching Star Trek with my dad, just wanting to be and inhabit those characters and live in that world, and that's why I wanted to be an actor. That was it. I was hooked at that point.
Wow, no, that is fantastic. And kind of funnily enough, how you were talking about wanting to be in the world of sci-fi with Star Wars and Star Trek, where funnily enough, you would get to voice a character in a lot of sci-fi productions, particularly as you spoke about Bubblegum Crisis. So what was...
I love Bubblegum Crisis.
Absolutely. So when you first got into the world of Bubblegum Crisis, what was that like, stepping into that world for the very first time?
Well, it was a fantasy come true. Especially the character of Pris. She is enigmatic. She's super bad. She drives a great motorcycle. She's really incredible, and an incredible character. My terror of taking on such a large role so early in my learning how to do it was also there. I was very nervous, and it was very hard work to learn how to do it correctly and know how to sync and all those songs. I'm not a singer by any stretch, you know. So I had to kind of learn how to sing better, and um, the lyrics that had to be written, and both Matt Greenfield and I both, you know, took stabs at writing them to the flaps because there are a lot more words than there are flaps in the animation. Flaps, I'm sure your audience knows what we mean by flaps is mouth movements and mouth openings and closings, and especially in the song sequences, you have these big wide open flaps that just stay open, mouth open the whole time, and you've got 20,000 words running in there. So we had to rewrite the words a little bit to those songs to match. And it was a lot of stress, a lot of pressure, and I wanted to make sure I did justice to this great character, and worked really, really, really hard on it. I'm not going to say I, you know, slacked off in my later years of my career, but once I got better at the sneaking part, I didn't have to work nearly as hard. So for me, Bubblegum Crisis is sort of burned into my memory because of just how many hours I had to spend perfecting that and getting it right and learning. It was hard. It was really hard.
That's fantastic. No, that's absolutely wonderful. And as mentioned about, of course, before, how you mentioned, of course, like being a script director and writer across a variety of different dub projects. Has being a script writer on like a variety of these anime projects helped to enhance your performance as an actress, but also help you understand like what it, like getting into the head of writing like all these various characters and stuff?
Yeah, it does. It does. You know, back when we first started this, you know, back in the early days of dubbing for anime specifically, the translations were rough, and getting them accurate for an American audience was difficult, and you had to really work a lot. These days, the translations are just about perfectly written for flaps as it is. So, I mean, and they're already really adapted to an American audience, and they're very, very, very solid. So script writing now isn't as difficult as it used to be. But it definitely, I know a lot more about the Japanese culture and anime idioms, and I have a lot better appreciation for the product itself, and yes, it does help with acting. But mostly directing helped with acting. The more I directed, the better I got at being in the booth. And I'm not going to say better at acting, I'm going to say better at being in the booth, because that's like half the battle. And I think most of us who've been in a voiceover booth will understand that, you know, combating your insecurities and your nerves and your head, whatever gets into your head, when you're in there by yourself with headphones and you can't hear anything else that's going on around you. You know, you could be your own worst enemy in those situations. And the more you do it, the longer you get, and the more time I spent on the other side of the glass, on the other side of the glass recording booth, the more I understood. I'm just going to sit here and wait for them to tell me to go, and then I'm going to go. And then I'm going to do a thing, and they're going to give me direction, and then I'm going to take that direction, and I'm going to do it again. And that's, you know, I stopped fighting. I stopped fighting myself, and I stopped fighting the process.
Wow, now that is fantastic. That is absolutely wonderful. How it gave you like this sort of bigger perspective on the, like this different perspective on the bigger picture in the world of voice acting, for that matter. So that's fantastic.
So when I'm a director, I'm on your side as an actor. You know, I'm on the actor's side. I want to do everything I can to help them have the best performance, and I think that that's the same for most of us as directors. We're on the actor's side. We want to help them, and so knowing that when I'm in the booth, I understand that the director is out there to help me, and they want to get the best thing out of me. It stops being this mystery anymore, and it's just fun. It's just a lot of fun.
Absolutely. No, that is fantastic. And especially like in the last few years in particular, but even though this has kind of been an ongoing debate for as long as anime has been around, was the whole dub versus sub argument that's been occurring with fans over the years. How do you personally feel about like the whole dub versus sub argument?
Well, at first I could kind of get there. I really do understand. Dubs in the early times were not very good, and the acting wasn't very good. The matching wasn't very good, and I get that. And you feel like you're missing something of the culture, something of the Japanese culture. You think it might be too Americanized, and I really understand and respect all those arguments. But nowadays it's so good, and sometimes the English and the Japanese are recorded simultaneously, so it's hard to tell which is first. You know. original. The script, yes, it did start in Japanese, but sometimes the scripts are written simultaneously. So there's not a question anymore of which is the original. So that argument's out. Not a question of syncing anymore, because that's completely settled. We match the flaps exactly. The next is the acting, and the actors that are doing this are seasoned actual actors, and so the acting is usually really good. So when I hear someone saying, I always prefer subs, they're so much better, but maybe they haven't watched many dubs. Or what dub? If you watch them a dub first, you're probably going to like that. That's going to be your favorite instead of the sub. So I kind of think whatever your first experience is with it, and if you can come at that with an open mind, then it's just a matter of taste, at that point.
No, absolutely.
So I respect the argument either way.
No, I think that's a great answer to have right there, and you've absolutely hit the nail right on the head with that one. In that, it's kind of an argument that is still going to go on till the end of time, of course. And it's never going to stop. What I will say though is I've always been more into the dubbing performances, because that was my first exposure to anime at that time, and I will go straight off the bat, and I will say this, and I've said this across every interview I've done, and I will say this to the day I die. If people ask me, why do you still go to comic conventions? Why do you still do the interviews that you do on this channel that I've been doing for literally the last 9 years? And I go to conventions, one, to meet the voice actors. They're my rock stars right there. And two, I've been doing this channel for the last 9 years to show my support to the animation and the voice acting industry. That's why I've been doing what I've been doing.
We certainly appreciate that, that's for sure. And I checked out your channel, and it goes way back. You've got some great oldies there and of course I work with John Swayze all the time. He's a dear friend.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much for that, and I really appreciate that. And I've been doing it for so long, and will continue to do it for how many years I may go on. That's never going to stop. So
That's fantastic.
That's fantastic. Absolutely. Thank you so much. Now, moving across into selections of your work. Now, my intro to your work, funnily enough, actually came from a series called Angelic Layer, where you played the mother of the main character, Misaki. What was it like stepping into the world of playing the character of Misaki's mother and playing an Angelic Layer?
Well, if you check out my IMDb listing or my Anime News Network listing, you'll see that I'm about 75% somebody's mom. So those are the flashiest of, nobody comes to my line going, oh, you were so-and-so's mom, I can't wait to meet you, Angelic Layer being a little bit different because the mom actually had quite a bit more to do, but I play a lot of moms. I jump in, when you're, just going back a little bit, when we worked at ADD Studios, we had, in the heyday, we had lots of studios going at once, and, if an actor happened to be there for one show, the director might pop their head out of the door and say, hey, can you come in and pick up this line or two over here? And you say, yeah, sure, and you go over there. As a director, when I was working there every day, all day, same thing happened. We were all jumping into each other's studios and stuff. So I've done so many moms that I don't even remember that being a mom, voicing a mom, because I'm in a diva register. And what would be more unusual is me voicing a 12-year-old girl. But yeah, the voicing of the mom is completely natural to me. And I say, oh, it's mom. Okay, cool. Is she a cool mom, an evil mom? I've only done a few grandmothers, but mostly I do a lot of moms. So it was, pretty normal for me. I do mom and then badass warrior.
No, that's fantastic.
And Azumi Curtis being kind of an example of both.
That's true. That is definitely true. And it reminds me of a couple of interviews that I did in the past, where I recently brought back Chuck Huber onto the channel, and I spoke to him about how his voice is very distinctive and everything, and how he's been mostly cast in like a lot of villainous roles, but also a lot of very manic, like very unhinged kind of characters. And the same is true for like Kent Williams, for example, who's got one of the most distinctive voices in anime, who again, he's so fantastic, that guy. Again, who's mostly known for playing a lot of villains, but also again a lot of very morally grey type of characters that you're unsure whether he's supposed to be a hero or a villain in the grand scheme of things. And it's almost kind of a bit of a thing where it's like where you spoke about how you were voicing like particularly mothers, but also badass warriors at the same time. Were you ever particularly
Yeah.
worried about like getting typecasted in those, like just being known for those roles, or did you want
Yeah,
to?
it
Oh,
does
sorry.
happen. There were several directors at ADV who I had to convince to have me play something different because I was always being, put into the mostly the badass warrior part. And I was like, I can't play other things. I can do stuff. And it was tough. It was difficult. And when I was really, pushing my career forward, I worried about that a little bit. I don't worry about that anymore. I'm game for whatever now. It's good, whatever. And I'm happy to punch in and say, 5 lines as a schoolgirl. That's cool. I'm cool with that too. Like I said, I'll do whatever. But yeah, in the beginning, yeah, I was worried. I really was. Especially when I started to see a trend happening. It's like, I've done like 5 shows in a row where I'm the bad guy. Or I'm the warrior, so it's like, One of my favorite bad guys that I don't get a lot of questions about is Ozzy from Orphan.
Wow.
I don't know if you've ever seen Orphan, but I like her so much because she goes from being a normal person to a dragon beast demon, and I really like the transition there. She's kind of this almost religious figure at first, a very not in her persona, and then turns into this demon. It's like, that was one of the villains that I really liked, and I never see that much. And one of the sort of warriors that I don't get a lot of questions about is Trinity Blood, Sister Noelle Moore in Trinity Blood. But she was another one that I don't get a lot of questions about. But she was one of my favorites.
Wow. No, that is fantastic. That's absolutely wonderful. And I think it's definitely true in that fact of like, and it again reminds me of a couple of scenarios where it was famously with Alec Guinness from the original Star Wars trilogy, who most people obviously remember for playing the original Obi-Wan Kenobi back in the day, where he got incredibly frustrated with just getting recognized as Obi-Wan Kenobi. But on the other end of that equation, you've got actors, for example, like Christian Bale, who most people remember as Batman for the Dark Knight trilogy, where he said if he was just to be remembered as Batman after he dies, he would totally be okay with that. So
Yeah.
so
But we don't talk about newsies.
but actually going back to talking about like a little bit with Orphan and Trinity Blood, like as fans have come up to you, like recognizing you from like your most famous roles and everything, but have fans ever come up to you and recognized you from roles that were completely unexpected, that were probably the last thing?
Times. Yeah, and like Air, and Air Gear. I don't know if you're. Those shows are a lot more popular than I expect them to be. I'm kind of looking at a full list here so I can remember because I've done hundreds of titles. I have to give myself. Yeah, there's a couple like Air Gear for some. There's a huge fan base over there. Fullmetal Panic, Fumofu. Air, Shinobi. Shinobi's a good one.
Yes.
I always like it when people come up to me and give me a Lady Death thing to sign because Lady Death is not anime, and I was like, oh, that's so cool that you have Lady Death. But what I really love is when people come up to my table for somebody like S-Death from Akame Ga Kill, they're like wanting me to sign S-Death stuff, and then they see that I have a picture of Ketchero from Ghost Stories, and they can't believe that I've done both, and I am Ketchero with Ghost Stories. And that shocked a lot of people for some reason. But, yeah, and that's the one for some reason that it really shocks people that they're kind of surprised by that.
I can imagine that, but that's absolutely fantastic though. But obviously with like any of the experiences that you've had in like interacting with fans and stuff, like especially from recognizing you from like different roles and stuff, like you obviously spoke about like some stories like there, but also going back into the recording side of things, with the experiences you've had with all the roles that you've done, is there one story that kind of stands out to you about like recording wise for a specific character, like one story that sort of stood out to you?
There's a couple. 1990s. But yeah, there are quite a few. One was the time I had to do like 50 takes of a single breath. That was a fun one. There's the first time that Izumi had to throw up. I think it took a lot of people in the studio. Mike McFarlane was directing, and the engineer by surprise that I totally went over the top with the gagging and the throwing up, and it was kind of shocking. And then there's the Easter eggs that directors like Kyle Jones like to do, where he'll record someone saying funny versions of their lines so that when the next person comes in to do the scene, they hear those funny versions and then have to do their lines straight against the funny versions. Those are fun.
Oh.
Those kinds of stories. We do prank each other quite a bit. We do prank each other. Like whoever's in the studio leaves a funny doll or something, and for the next person to find, especially if we know who's coming in after us, we like to prank them.
That's fantastic. That's absolutely wonderful. And speaking about, of course, with Izumi Curtis, talking about that is going into like and again was another intro to your work at the time, and of course your most famous character is Izumi Curtis from the original Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood series.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, sorry, Fullmetal Alchemist, excuse me. And then
right.
And then later on went into Brotherhood. What was it like playing that character and stepping into the world of Fullmetal Alchemist for the very first time through the 2003 series?
Going into Fullmetal Alchemist for the first time was great because I hadn't really done much work for Funimation in Dallas, and Mike McFarlane took a chance on me and brought me in, and so I had to travel. In the drive from Houston to Dallas is like 4.5 hours, so I had to travel each time I did it, and because I was coming in from out of town, I did all my hours in an episode at once, and it was exhausting. But Mike is such a great director, and he really takes the time to explain to you and tell you exactly everything that's going on. And he worked with me during our first episode to kind of establish a range for Izumi and get the character set, so that once that was set, it flew by a lot faster. The process at Funimation was slightly different than what we did at ADV at the time. The recording process was slightly different. At ADV, you hear the Japanese and you hear the other actors that have recorded before you in your headphones as you're recording, and you don't hear the beeps, as we call them, that beat you in, so that it's 3 beeps, you come in on the silent. And whereas Funimation does use that, and you don't hear the actors who've recorded before, and you don't hear the Japanese as loud, and it's a very different process. So I was a little nervous going into that because it's different, and different is always a little bit scary. But he's so good and so comforting and so great to work with, and really helped me establish the character. And then came Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood, where it was many years later, and of course, like we talked about with subs versus dubs, because I had come into Fullmetal Alchemist, my first experience was the first one. I did not like Brotherhood. I was like, I don't get this. I don't understand it at all. And I don't understand the character. She's all light and a little bit fluffier. I don't get her. She's not as dark, and all that evaporated within my first hour of recording, and I loved it. I thought it was just a completely new take on it, and a character I was so familiar with from a completely different perspective. By the time we're getting her origin episode of climbing up on the mountain and the ice and the snow, and I was like really, really loving that Brotherhood quite a bit. So now I'm like, I don't know which one I like better. I kind of like them both. They're both different.
Wow. Well, you kind of definitely speak of like what a lot of the fans often talk about with Fullmetal Alchemist 2003 to the Brotherhood series, in that it's kind of personal preference, I think. It's like one prefers one over the other, and there's nothing wrong with that. But, and of course, just like with Angelic Layer and Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood, Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood is still my personal favorite over the original series. And
Did you start that first? Did you start with Brotherhood?
I actually started with the 2003 series. That was my intro to Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. That was my intro to Fullmetal Alchemist. And I didn't know at the time, because I didn't even know the manga had existed around that time, of course. And of course, I understand, of course, the way that the original series had ended versus the way that happened in the manga was because the manga hadn't been fully finished at that point. And then when I heard that they did Brotherhood at the time, I was like, okay, what's going on here? And that's when they turned it into the version of Fullmetal Alchemist that to many fans will say is probably the version that the original should have been from the start. Even though everyone has kind of got their own personal preference. Like, elements of the original we preferred and elements of Brotherhood that we preferred. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that at all.
No, not at all. Not at all. And I have a love for both of them for that same reason. You know, I like the lightness and hope that's in Brotherhood. I love the darkness that's in the original. Not the original. Obviously, the manga's the original, but the 2003 version. There's elements to both that I really, really love.
Absolutely, definitely. And of course, you and all the other actors across the board have done a fantastic job in the series. It was absolutely amazing. And I will go straight on the record, in just like with Fruits Basket, the reboot series that they did years later after the fact from the original series, Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood is still up there as one of the best remakes of any anime series in a very long time. It's still right up there as one of the best.
Can I ask you a question?
Absolutely, go for it.
What was your first anime that you ever saw?
Wow. Really good question, actually. I need to do a post about this at some point. But my intro to anime at the time, funnily enough, was from the original Pokemon series back in the 90s, because I'm a 90s kid myself. So my exposure to anime really came from Pokemon at that time. But at the time, I didn't know that was Japanese animation. I just saw that and just went like, oh, that's cool. I'm just going to go with this. And I still remember it quite vividly, where it was on a VHS tape, and it was in the color yellow as opposed to black, like a lot of standard VHS tapes, as a reference to Pikachu from the Pokemon series. And so Pokemon was kind of the start of anime for me, as well as like Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z years later. And then it just started snowballing into all these different anime as the years started going along. And so I'm still discovering like a whole range of new anime out there and stuff. They're still expanding a whole bunch of stuff, but also going for a lot of the titles that I've heard mentioned so many times, like Fruits Basket, Pokemon, Dragon Ball, One Piece is another good example, Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. So if it hadn't been for Pokemon and all that kind of stuff, or it hadn't been for me discovering that, who knows, I probably would have still gotten into anime, but it would have been much later down the line.
Right. Yeah, the first anime I ever saw, I didn't know it was anime. I had no idea. It was Voltron. You know, I had no idea that it was...
Yep, I'm pretty familiar with Voltron.
No idea. Yeah, no idea. Actually, I didn't even know that until ADV was doing a dub of it. Like, wait a minute. I had no idea. I didn't know.
But no, that's fantastic.
Funny. Yeah, Pokemon. Yeah, that's my niece got into anime through Pokemon too. That's a very standard route of entry.
That's fantastic. No, that's absolutely wonderful. But no, Pokemon was kind of my first introduction to anime at that time. And at the time, and that was kind of my first dubbed property at that time, when that got me into English dub, like years and years down the track, even before I discovered like the original Japanese versions years later, and kind of what got me into the English voice actors in particular, in like meeting them and discovering who all these names were and stuff. So just a little bit different compared to everybody else though, but that's fantastic though. Now, going across into talking about with Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood, and actually there's been a lot of reboots of a lot of different anime over the years, a lot of really classic anime. Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood is probably the highest example of that, but also the Fruits Basket reboot, and now, just this year, because of the 25th anniversary of this series, we're about to be getting a remake of One Piece by Netflix. What's been your opinion about a lot of anime being rebooted?
You know, it's not just anime that's being rebooted. There's old properties are being rebooted constantly, so why not anime too? I mean, it's sometimes storytelling is cyclical, and we go into cycles with the stories that we tell in our media, and sometimes a topic that's been covered covered before was covered great, and we'd like to see it in a new light. Like there's going to be a new. I don't know if you remember the movie 9 to 5.
Yes, I've heard of that
I just read
movie.
recently that they're rebooting that, and then there's the reboots of the Ghost Stories, and there's the reboot. I mean, reboots are just something that we do, whether we call it a reboot or not. You know, there's stories that are retold in different brands over again. Like Shakespeare's The Tempest has been redone in so many different movies in so many different ways. That's how we tell stories. You know, we remember old stories and redo them and put our own spin on them, and they stay alive. So if there's a story, whether anime or book or play or anything that really spoke to a lot of people, I can definitely see why a new generation would want to see themselves in it and want to see it again.
Absolutely.
But with themselves in it, and their own influence and their own ideas and thoughts melded with it.
That's fantastic. That's absolutely wonderful. And I think that's a really great answer to see it in that sense, because it's like, best example is like the latest One Piece remake announcement that they made, in that, yes, One Piece is still going incredibly strong at this point and is not going to slow down, at least for the next 5 years, depending on when the author is going to finish the manga at this point, or whether they're going to finish the anime at this point. In that, yep, we're going to do this remake as a way to celebrate the 25th anniversary of the series, but also as a way to introduce it to people who've never watched One Piece in their life, and that way they don't have to catch up on like 1,336 episodes or something.
Well, that's, it's when we watch things and when we seek out entertainment or stories for ourselves, what we're really looking for is ourselves. We want to see ourselves in the media that we're seeing. So if there's a beloved piece that is older than a new generation that has new ideas and new feelings and new thoughts and aren't necessarily able to see themselves in, they need to redo it to put themselves in it and see it that way.
Absolutely. No, that's a great answer to have right there. And now, of course, talking a little bit more about with the other side of that, in that in the last few years, we've been since the beginning of time, I think, we've been getting a lot of live action adaptations of a lot of pop culture work, but even recently, with anime in particular, with very little success up until the One Piece series happened, and still getting a lot of live action adaptations, but more particularly, we had the live action Fullmetal Alchemist movie. Did you ever get to see it yourself? And what's been your view on? Wow. What has been your? That's crazy. That's amazing.
I didn't even know there was one. There's a live action Fullmetal Alchemist?
There is, yes. I know that is insane. That is absolutely insane.
I'm gonna look that up. I haven't seen it. I think there are dangers in doing that. Live action adaptations. Again, it's a new art form. It's reimagining a story, telling it again in a different way. I have nothing against that at all. I just think that there are certain things that can't be done in live action. Well, I guess now with CG and AI, you really can. But there's some things that just don't translate. That the imagination needs to be there for. But I don't know. I haven't seen that one, so I'd really like to see it. Yeah. I actually was going to watch the Last Airbender live action, but I haven't yet. But it's on my list to see next. So I'll tell you about that, what I think about that one after I see it.
No. That's absolutely fantastic. Look, as someone who's watched the best example of that is mentioning, of course, Avatar: The Last Airbender. Having watched the original animated series, having seen the live action movie, before getting back into rediscovering the animated series, and then watching the live action show after that, it's like when John Swayze was asking me about, like, did you prefer the original One Piece animated series or did you prefer the live action? Like, which one did you prefer? It's like, that's like comparing apples and oranges. It's like, I love both of them. Exactly. I love both of them for completely different reasons. Obviously, with regards to anime and stuff, because it's such a very over-the-top kind of animation style, depending on the genre that you're doing, it's something you're not necessarily... One Piece is the best example of that. It's like, because of how over-the-top that type of animation style is, it's something you can't necessarily replicate in live action. But, that being said, though, the live action stuff is great and everything, and I'm really happy that they started to figure things out a little bit and say, we can't replicate it one-to-one from the anime, but we can still do like a version of it that.
And I think that shows and movie adaptations of comic books have really helped us as a media watching public accept new conventions of the crazy, like Legend, for example. I think this was Legion. Sorry, Legion. You know, it delves into the fantastical. I think it captures the comic quite well in what it's able to do. And you know, The Boys, or there's another one that was just these comic book adaptations of these series are able to do so much more than conventional filmmaking, and they've been able to allow us as an audience to accept new ways of seeing things that we're used to in a different medium. So I think that we're getting there to where we'll be able to do, you know, but again, like you said, they're both different. They're different, completely different products at the end of the day, and they might share similar subject matter, the same characters, and the same universe, but at the end of the day, they're different, and you can appreciate each one for its own merits.
Absolutely. No, that's a great attitude to have right there. Now, another character that was another one of my favorites was Sakaki from Azumanga Daioh. What was it like playing that? What was it like playing that character, and in the series, in such a series as crazy as Azumanga Daioh?
Yeah. Well, I'm the straight man, obviously, in that series. But you know, the first time personally have a thing for cats. I love cats, and I am the type of person that if I see a cat across the street, I will run to that cat and try to get them to like me. And with more than one occasion ending very badly. But because they don't always like me. But this is the first time I saw Sakaki, you know, go for a cat. Nobody told me that she was going to do that, or that was part of her character going into it. I didn't know. And the first time I see a cat, my first reaction as the actor in the movie was like, ooh! You know? And so I completely understood that whole part of her, and that she's got this, you know, she's taller than everybody else. She's awkward because of it. She's got lower energy than everybody else, and so she's just, you know, kind of hard to fit in and isolates her a lot. But at the end of the day, she's just a kid like everybody else. And whenever she gets a chance to just be that kid, it's really amazing. And she, again, is one of my favorite characters. I just love Sakaki so much.
Absolutely.
And I swear that opening theme, it gets stuck in my head for weeks at a time, and I can't get it out of my head because it's just so catchy.
It is a pretty catchy thing, and the anime is still like one of the best comedy animes out there.
Isn't it great?
It is fantastic, and you and all the actors across the board were fantastic during the series, and I was really surprised.
You've got some really great people.
Absolutely, and I was very surprised in the fact it's obviously meant to focus on like this group of characters in the context of the series, but really the main focus on that was almost like your character Sakaki and Jessica Boone's Chio-chan were sort of the main characters in that sense, because it's kind of looking at the series sort of from their perspective, in that it's focusing on Chio-chan and being this child prodigy in this high school world, and also focusing on Sakaki with her trying to show everyone, I'm not just who everyone thinks that I am. I'm also this.
I'm not scary. I'm just a kid. Yeah.
But
yeah, I just love. It's such a sweet show. That I wish that more people had seen it and were as into it as I am. I really like it a lot.
Absolutely, but no, that's fantastic, and that's why channels like mine exist, to promote all that stuff across.
Go see Azumanga Daioh, find it, see it. It's so good. It's
Absolutely.
So good. Everybody in it is so good. It's just such a fun show.
Absolutely. Now you've also played across a variety of other projects, from like obviously talking about like Panty Pony Dash to Samurai Gun to even more recent types of work that would go on to become huge names, from Made in Abyss to Shenmue, which you just did a couple of years ago. With looking across like all these different projects over the years, what's been your opinion about the quality of anime from when you first started in your career to where anime has evolved to where it is now, especially like hearing about the working conditions, like especially in the last few years, like hearing all these articles going about of like the working conditions in the Japanese animation industry, but also from
I'm going to echo John Swayze here a little bit in that since I don't work in those conditions, I really can't speak to them. So I know that in America, our conditions are wonderful. I feel completely supported and really taken care of. You know, we're not going to get rich doing anime. That's you know, it doesn't pay awesome. You know, everybody thinks, oh, you must be rich and famous. No, not really. But the conditions are, you know, we're allowed plenty of time to do our work, and we're respected. And the directors that I work with are fantastic and understanding and really talented. And so, yeah, I can't speak to the conditions in Japan. I really don't know, and I'm in and out of the industry these days. Over the past like 10 years or so, I just dip in, so I don't read a whole lot of trade papers about it. So you probably know a lot more about that than I do.
Right. Well, no, that's fantastic though. But looking across like all the different projects that you worked on over the years, how do you
Mm-hmm.
feel about like the quality of where the quality of anime has started to go from when it was back
Oh,
then to where it's evolving like now, especially like having had such series like Shenmue and especially Made in Abyss, which is considered to be
yeah,
like one of the best anime in like the last 10 or
yeah.
20 years.
Made in Abyss is really special, and Shinmue is too. I really enjoyed working with both of those, and Made in Abyss was specifically fun for me because I just adore working with Kyle Jones. And the animation is spectacular. I mean, it is beyond anything. You know, I'm not going to say anime across the board is always all getting better because there are certain shows that, you know, like our media, that's some have a lot of budget and they have a lot of thought put into them, and some don't. And some have really complicated stories that are really well thought out, and some don't. And some, you know, it's just a matter of finding those really good gems in any era. But Made in Abyss is definitely one of those. And some of the animation I've seen, I can't remember the name of it. It's a movie that John Swayze just directed. I saw it at Anime Houston this last year, and it was, yeah, the animation. What they're able to do now is mind-boggling. I mean, it's just so beautiful. The shading and the backgrounds, and um, just the pure imagination of what they're able to accomplish. It's, yeah, the artwork is definitely getting better. I mean, there's no question about that across the board. And I think, you know, computers help a lot. Cell animation can be kind of limiting. Back when they didn't have a lot of budgets, I'm always going to be a fan of the older anime because that's just where I started. There's, like going all the way back to, I'm looking at my list now because I can't remember the name of it. Uh, um, Macross. That animation's
Yes.
kind of rough, but I love it. And it's just part of the style. 80 Police. Um, that the animation is what it is at that time, but I kind of have a soft spot for it, and I really really enjoy that as much as I love the new shaded, beautiful, three-dimensional stuff that you see now. I'm still kind of Razafon is always going to be quite dear to me, and the way it looks as well. But there were older anime that were really starting to go into that more shaded look, like I don't know if you remember a movie called Tree of Palm. It was really beautiful. My Beautiful Girl Mari is also really pretty. But I don't know. To answer your question, I think that yes, artwork is getting definitely better. But I still love the old stuff too. I still do. I can't help it.
No, 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 no. That's absolutely fantastic, and I think that's a great answer to have right there. Especially like for myself as a fan, I absolutely love like a lot of the anime that's been coming out in the last couple of years, and it's been really, really solid to this day forward.
And the
And
artwork is beautiful. The lighting of
absolutely,
that. I mean, it's just incredible.
absolutely. But especially going back and rediscovering like a lot of the older anime from like back in in like the 80s, the 90s, and the early
Uh,
2000s. It's like yes. Some of it is a bit dated, some of the stuff they get into is a bit dated, but it's
yeah.
still amazing for what it was back during
Mhm.
its time. And I think especially with like what's going on with what I've been hearing about with the anime industry in Japan at the moment, with the working conditions and stuff. Look, I will say straight off the bat is that hold on a sec. There we go. I will say straight off the bat is that hold on a sec. But anyway, going back to what I was talking about just before is like I think with what I've been hearing about with like the with articles going about with the working conditions of like the anime industry in Japan and stuff, it's like, yep, it's terrible about what's going on up there, and I wish the actors and all the anime industry to please do better working conditions, because they're working their butts off to deliver such incredible products for the rest of us,
Yeah.
especially for actors like yourself and all the other voice actors out there
Yeah.
to do work on and stuff.
I guess it's kind of similar to what our gaming industry here went through, with, you know, animators specifically and developers in the gaming industry working, you know, 12-hour, 14-hour days, sleeping under their desks, and that was just part of the culture to get a product out. And that's hopefully starting to ease up a bit in the gaming industry here, but that was not unheard of back when gaming was first kind of getting popular.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's definitely true. And hey, it's still early. It's still early in 2024. We're out of the pandemic and the lockdown and the worst of it. Things can only go up from here.
Yeah.
That's how I like to look at it as. But now I'm just going to throw in a couple of trivia stuff for you, and you tell me if this is true or not, that I've read across somewhere. Now, is it true that during Fullmetal Alchemist, that the only other role that you saw yourself playing, apart from Izumi Curtis, was Lust? Did you end up? Is that really true?
Yeah. Actually, I know the interview you're referring to, and that, you know, it's been so long since I've seen Full Metal, but yeah, I think it still rings true. Yeah.
Right. Did you end up like auditioning for like when you got into auditioning for Fullmetal Alchemist? Was it specifically to go after like one specific character, or did you just read through like a random character at the time?
Mike McFarlane had me come in.
Sorry, what was that? Sorry.
I said Mike McFarlane had me come in to play Azumi.
Right. Okay. So you walked in to do that kind of role, but you said that the only other role that you saw yourself playing was Lust, before Lust got played by Laura Bailey in the original series and in Brotherhood.
Right.
How did you have gone on to do the voice of Lust? How would you have wanted her to sound like? Like, especially
like Laura Bailey. She's amazing.
Wow.
Honestly, once I hear an actor play something, that's in my head, and so that's what that character sounds like now. And I don't think of I do it differently. I really don't. And I think, wow, she did a great job. and then it's more of like, I wish I were Laura Bailey, you know, kind of thing. So no, she's amazing. Big, huge fan of her work. So you know, it would be a fun character to hold. I don't really think of doing something differently than Laura would.
That's fantastic. But no, that's absolutely wonderful. And the second thing is, it said, I think, on your Behind the Voice Actors page, and tell me if this is true or not, that one voice actor that you would love to meet, or that you would particularly love to work with, is the legendary Frank Welker.
Frank Welker, yeah. Yeah, sure. I mean, that was one of my original, you know, back when, hold on, I'm going to look up something real quick because I need to, somebody else, let's see. I was a huge fan of Frank Welker at the very beginning, but now that I'm exposed to it a little bit more, there are other voice actors that I find incredibly, that I really like their work. And of course, nobody's done an interview with me since, you know, before you in a long time, so my answers have kind of changed about that. But like, I actually really like Seth MacFarlane's work, and Seth Green in American Dad. I think Seth MacFarlane has such a range in what he can do as an actor, as a voice actor, that it's kind of mind-boggling sometimes. And so yeah, I really do like his work quite a bit. Hold on. And Futurama Philip, Billy West, is also a huge fan. I'm a huge fan of his, and I actually got to meet him recently at Anime Houston, and I was very, very excited to meet him for the first time. He's a very nice man.
That's fantastic. No, that's absolutely wonderful. Yeah. And hey, as you mentioned about before, with like a lot of comic conventions somehow bringing together like a lot of different actors and all that kind of stuff. My question to the fans out there, let me know in the comments below, let's get it. Actually, no, not a question, but like, let's get a comic convention happening right in Australia and get Frank Welker and Christine Auten in the convention together. That would be
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah.
But no, that would be
And
fantastic.
yeah, so I got to meet Billy West, and that was Billy West.
That's fantastic. No, that's absolutely wonderful. Now, but a bit of a head scratching question here is like
Okay.
looking back a lot like a lot of the roles or shows that you've done. What two shows have you worked on? Would you personally want to see a crossover between story wise and character wise?
Oh wow, that is a head scratcher. Crossovers. I think a fun one would be like, Razafon with Akame Ga Kill. Big giant robots with the Night Raiders.
I can see that. I can definitely see that.
Yeah, I actually I like tech anime a lot, so I like the big giant robot ones. But I found myself really getting into Akame Ga Kill. So yeah, I think that would be kind of an interesting crossover. Anything that's two different genres too would be kind of fun.
That would be
Like Pawnee Pony Dash treatment of like Hero Mask or something. This is completely different, or Shinmue would be completely different takes on things.
that'd be pretty interesting to see that, and
Yeah.
knowing that, and of course, like we have seen like a lot of crossovers in like over the years, like with Dragon Ball and One Piece, and all these other
Mm-hmm.
types of animes and stuff. So anything is totally possible at this point. Anything is
Anything's
totally
possible.
possible.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, now looking back, now another bit of a head scratcher here is that looking at the overall like entertainment industry, not just within the voice acting and the animation industry, but if you could change one thing about the entertainment industry, what would you personally want that to be?
Uh, I think that I would like to go back before AI was let out of the bag and start to change contracts with that in mind. I think that we're going to see homogenization because of AI. We're going to start to see more boring, more homogenized ideas because of AI and AI creation. Just sort of a group think that's going to start to creep into all of our entertainment and all of our media because of AI's influence. Um, and I would like to go back and see contracts, especially actor contracts, be modified more quickly to accommodate AI, the AI's presence, and same with writers.
Right. No, that's fantastic and
Yeah.
everything, and especially like and especially I think the other thing as well that's been going on in the last, I think since like last year or something, was when the streaming company, I'm not sure if it was just the streaming company, which was Funimation, when they went into the
Yeah.
merger with Crunchyroll, I believe. Is that true?
That
I
they went into merger.
I think there was a
Is
merger that was happening between those two companies or something, or
well,
streaming
Crunchyroll and
services.
Funimation are together. They've always been
Ah,
together.
right, okay. Well, when I heard about the
Right.
merger that was happening with the Funimation streaming service, because there have been a lot of posts with a lot of voice actors. They said, "Thank you, Funimation. Like, I got my start around this company and all that kind of stuff." And then hearing the news about that, like, how did you
Well,
react to it?
from what I read, it was they were looking into the possibility of using AI for their subtitles.
Right, okay.
Right. I don't think AI is quite there with voice yet. You can't get the same kinds of performances. And, at the end of the day, people are still cheaper than AI. Actual physical actors are still cheaper. That not always be the case, but again, though, I would caution that our biggest problem with AI, yes, it's loss of work and loss of creative work for actors and writers specifically, and animators even more specifically. But I think the more AI gets used and put into our creative process, the more homogenized these ideas are going to get, and the more boring, because they'll all be the same. it's just a natural inclination that's happening right now anyway in music, specifically all your top hits, fewer words, fewer beats, they all sound the same, fewer notes, and it's starting to sort of lead together with each other. And I think that AI is only going to push that further, and we're going to see a homogenization of our entertainment and our media.
Well,
I'd like to not see. I like the diversity. I like the difference. What humans can do.
Well, look, I will say straight off the bat with that is that I feel like with the whole AI technology and everything, that like AI has been around for as long as like up until it was let out of the bag, so to speak, in like the last couple of years and everything. And it's like, it's still a form of technology at the end of the day, and people are going to be the ones to run that kind of thing. I understand, of course, that like AI can be used for like voice actors who, for example, James Earl Jones who played Darth Vader from the Star Wars universe, he signed off, I think, for his voice to be used in like AI properties and stuff for future work, because he is getting much older and everything. But at the same token, it's like voice actors, you're never going to get rid of that. You're never going to get rid of real people in entertainment properties. That's something that's never going to...
last words.
I just like to be optimistic about things and hopeful about things. After being through a pandemic and lockdown for as long as we have, I think we can survive anything at this point.
Yeah, I mean, of course, I would like to believe that for sure. And I do think AI, especially in the creation phase of art in particular, is probably going to go through a phase like Google Glass did. We were all excited about AR vision, and these headsets and Oculus. But at the end of the day, we actually prefer the real thing, experiencing the world in its own. And then I think that AI is going to be a little bit like that, and that I'm hoping anyway that people get tired of the end product that AI generates being so like every other thing that AI generates.
Right. No, that's definitely true.
And interest.
No, absolutely. That's definitely true. And hey, it's still early years. Just gotta wait and see what happens in like the next 6 months.
Yeah. I salute our AI overlords.
And now, without going into any spoilers, what's next for Christine Auten for the fans to know about?
I am actually on a little bit of a break from voice acting right now, but I do plan to get back into it in about a year. And of course, I've got some continuing characters that I will keep doing. But for now, I actually just moved to New Mexico, and I'm starting an art gallery with my husband, and so I'm kind of focused on that right now. So be doing that for a bit, and then in about a year I'll be back into recording, I think. But oh hey, this is news for you. I just found out that Azumi Curtis is getting a Funko Pop.
Wow.
So I'm probably going to do a few more conventions in the coming months of rest of the year to help distribute those Funko Pops.
Absolutely, that would be amazing.
Yeah.
And fingers crossed, one of them will be right here in Australia, because that would be amazing.
Oh, I would love to go to Australia. I've never been.
I will do everything in my power to try and get you down for any of the conventions, any of the rest of the conventions we have later this year, or even next year for that matter. So.
Oh yeah, no, I'm always up for. I just kind of rediscovered conventions after a big break from doing live events. You've heard of South by Southwest in Texas? I was a producer there for 10 years, and produced a lot of conventions and events. So I stopped being a guest for a while because I was working on them so much as a staff, as a producer. But now I'm back into being a guest. So I'm hoping to make a few more convention appearances in the coming years.
That's fantastic.
It's fun. I love meeting the kids. I really do.
Well, that's fantastic. Was this did you say was this a guest at like a specific convention, like Comic-Con or something? Or was this, what was that again?
I worked as a producer at South by Southwest in Austin, Texas for about 10 years.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. That's absolutely wonderful. And final question, What do you think Azumi Curtis would say if she was in Australia?
In Australia?
Yep.
Oh my gosh. I think that instead of the island, she would have sent the brothers out to the middle of the country to survive and find their way. What is the deepest city in the country?
Ooh, I think probably
the deepest point.
I think probably the equivalent to something like that I think would be an interesting scenario for them would be like something like the Northern Territory or like Western Australia, like the bush outback kind of parts
of the bush outback. Yeah. Now I think about it, there's a section in Maiden Abyss kind of similar to that. Wow, I keep sending people off to find their strength.
Well, that'd be an interesting scenario.
Same thing.
Yeah, Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood Australian edition, right there.
In the outback, yeah, absolutely.
That'd be really fun to see that actually. That'd be like a fan animation just right there. That'd be so fantastic.
That would be great.
Absolutely.
I'd watch that.
I would watch that as well. That would be fantastic. Christine Auten, thank you so much. It's been an absolute honor to have you on here.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the invitation.
That's awesome. Absolutely no problem at all. And is there anything you would like to say to the fans out there in Australia and in the world?
Oh gosh, keep on it, because this stuff survives on you, and that's the truth. And the more you support it, the more it happens. And we love being there for you.
No, absolutely. And we love being there for you and all the other voice actors over these years, because you do what you do and you help make everything happen for us fans. And that's why the pop culture community exists. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'm a fan too. I'm a pop culture fan as well. So I get it. So I live in both worlds.
Absolutely. That's fantastic. Well, guys, if you'd like to know more about Christine Auten, you can check out the links which I'll put to you in the description below once this interview is up later today. Don't forget to like, subscribe, click that bell, and check out the links below. And don't forget to comment below as well. Thank you all so much for listening. This is Simon and Christine Auten signing off. Bye for now.
Thank you.